Takuspa, how we doing? You guys ready to end this conference? Did you learn a lot? Did the coffee not kick in yet this morning? Cool. Thank you so much for allowing me to close out your keynote. Nikki got on my radar probably back in January, and so for the last 6 or so months, I've been prepping and kind of researching your whole organization, but believe it or not, it's not the first time that I've been to Hill Country. This is my second visit. It took 12 years for me to get back. I actually had the opportunity to come down here in 2007. I believe it was my first year working in student affairs, and my wife and I were both in student affairs, so we went through that whole journey of like dual career searches. So anybody out there is looking to do dual career search, is a whole other conversation we can have off stage. But she came down here to do an NSO graduate assistantship at UTSA. Any Roadrunners out there? Oh, there's my people. Cool. She'll be happy to know that there's some people back there. And what's crazy is when I came down here, she picked me up in San Antonio Airport. We came into UTSA's campus, and she takes me to her residence hall where she's staying that summer, and there's a friggin' pool right outside. And then we toured the whole campus, and then the next day we went up to UT Austin, and it was unbelievable to see how big that campus was, and the rec center, and the student center, and the football stadium. And so I'm starting to think, I'm like, maybe this is true that everything is bigger in Texas, because I came from this small little college in northwest New Jersey. So as I'm thinking about putting this presentation together, I think what I have to say and what I have to share and what I've spent my 15 years in higher education immersing myself in and being really passionate about, I think puts a really nice bow tie on your entire conference around marketable skills. See, I have this story that I knew I was going to share, but literally, so I came here Sunday night, and I got to hear Dr. Tia Brown provide a great keynote. Sat through a couple sessions yesterday. I sat through Diana Lee's Art of Storytelling. Where's Diana? You still here? Cool. I was very intrigued by what you guys had to say. And then I listened to Dr. Adam Peck as well. And what I started to realize is what Dr. Tia Brown was talking about of equity and all the different competencies that hiring managers and executives look for. This is all great data. And what Dr. Adam Peck was talking about, the gap between knowledge of what we learn and the skill sets of how we apply them, and where that kind of tipping point is, I had my own reflection on this story that I'm going to share. And so I want to go all the way back to when I graduated college. It was May of 2006. I graduated from a very small university, Fairleigh Dickinson University up in Madison, New Jersey, about 3,000 students. And I spent all 4 years there studying marketing in the business program. And I did everything that you're supposed to do, everything that we tell our students to do. I did 3 internships. Sophomore to junior year, I was an orientation leader. I got really involved, came out of my shell. I was an only child, very shy growing up, and college was a place where I literally developed myself. And I started to realize that, what am I going to do next? I said, the next best thing is let's go a beeline right into a 5th-year program, and I'll do a Master's of Communication while working at my last internship that was a PR company that hopefully was going to turn into a full-time job. So I enrolled, literally I think it was like I graduated May 15th. On May 18th, I had a graduate assistantship lined up. I was enrolled into this program for August. And now I had the summer to kind of wait. I was commuting an hour and a half back and forth to this small PR agency that I was working for. And I remember going to the boss and saying, hey, Neil, I did what I was supposed to do. Like, I got the flashy degree, I studied marketing, I've interned for you for almost a year. Can I get a job? Sure, we'll pay you $24,000. That was like 1/4 of what all my other peers were making. 1/3, 1/4, 1/2. I said, sure, I'll take it, even though I'm going to commute an hour and a half and I have nowhere to live. Then I said, okay, I'll do the graduate assistantship. Neil, can you help me out with maybe some tuition reimbursement? No. Cool, I'll still do it anyway. So all of a sudden, like 6 weeks go by, and I'm like, Kev, what are you doing? This doesn't feel right. You have all this knowledge that Dr. Adam Peck talked about, and you have all these great skills that you learned outside of the classroom through student affairs, and you're not applying them. You don't feel passionate about them. So I remember this so vividly, and I love sharing this story. My wife, Courtney, and I, we were dating at the time. I called out sick from my PR internship. It was like right around July 4th weekend, took a long vacation, and the only thing what we did was we drove an hour and a half into New York City, right to Central Park. The only 2 things that we brought were her yellow lab Bailey in the car and my resume and a pencil. So we go in Central Park and we're hanging out on this beautiful summer day, And what I start realizing is I have all my 3 marketing and PR internships at the very top, which is what my career advisor said, what my professor said, but those weren't speaking to me. And at the very bottom, and I'm sure we've either told our students to do this or other people we know might have told our students to do this, but all those extracurriculars where we volunteered had one little line or one little section, right? And those positions and those sacrifices and those movements that we start on our campus hold so much weight, but yet we give them so much little space on our resume. And what I literally did was I took my first leap of faith and flipped my resume upside down and put those marketing and PR internships below all of these extracurriculars. So being president and founding member of a marketing club, starting a Habitat for Humanity chapter where we volunteered in Opelika, Alabama, programming committee, orientation leader, you name it, I was your typical student leader. I then actually made bullet points for each of those because guess what? We fundraised $9,000. We recruited, we marketing, we trained. We did all these things, but guess what? I got paid $0 for it. But that's where the knowledge and the skills and where that tipping point that Dr. Adam Peck was talking about, that was my sweet spot. And so that was what I wound up doing, whereas I quit that PR internship with nothing left to do. Thank God, and I'm going to give a shout out to my parents, that they didn't really think I was too crazy. They said, whatever you're going to figure out, you'll figure it out. And what wound up happening is I applied to any single job, entry level into student affairs that would basically look at my resume. Because I knew you need a master's degree. And I wound up going to an even smaller school in Northwest New Jersey called Centenary University, where I had the amazing privilege to wear so many hats: recreation, student leadership, service learning, and I did 2 years there. I did it for even less money than what my boss Neil was going to hire me for. But the thing that I got out of that was entrepreneurial spirit and team. I got to wear a lot of hats. Every day was different. I got to pretty much start a unit from scratch, and they paid for my master's degree. That then propelled me onto Rutgers University. And the pictures that are coming up behind me represent the first 8 or 9 years of my higher ed and student affairs career, where I worked with just hundreds of passionate, thriving student leaders. And what I'm here to talk about today is all these student leaders, a lot of them I'm going to talk about today, they had the knowledge, they had the skills, they wanted to apply them. But the view that I want to share today is what I realized when I was 22 years old, graduating college, is I had the marketable skills. I knew how to talk about them. I was being pushed in a totally different fork in the road. I just didn't want to. I was shy. I wasn't being ambitious. I wasn't advocating for myself. So the spin that I want to come today is how can we help our students maybe find their niche, find their passion, and maybe that's where they'll unlock their skills and their knowledge and be able to talk about themselves. When I think back to Dr. Tia's Brown, that video that she shared, great video, but maybe that student was just not feeling it. Maybe it wasn't thriving. Maybe it wasn't being set up to be put in the right position. So what I've done since leaving Rutgers University is I still am in the higher ed world. I've literally mashed up my marketing degree and my master's in leadership. And I do 3 main things, and I just want to kind of paint the picture here of what my day looks like. Because even though I popped in and out of sessions, literally I was immersed with client work, but a good part of my gig is FYN Creative, as Taylor mentioned. It's a digital storytelling agency. I actually had the pleasure of keynoting up in NERSA, up in Boston. That's where I saw Stephanie last. So if anybody knows Stephanie McAlpine, please give her a shout out. Then I adjunct and teach at George Washington University in General Assembly, and I just love teaching. And anytime I can do this on a grand scale and hopefully have a few light bulb moments go off for a handful of you today, this is my world. This is where I feel invincible. And then what we're really here to talk about is this grassroots organization I started in 2012 called the Niche Movement. It's a community of young professionals helping other college students and young professionals rethink the traditional career search, the way we go about it, not just relying on a one-page resume, and finding a job that they love early on in life versus when they're at the end of their career spectrum, whatever that might be. So here's 3 things that I hope I can answer for you. By the way, I love these. Please, next time you do a presentation, Google like Lego slides at work. These things are gold. My wife uses these all the time for her job. So there's 3 questions I want to answer. The first one here is, how do we facilitate learning to help our students merge their digital savviness, because we all know they got it, and many of you have it, with real skills. Love the definition of power skills, love the definition that everybody's given so far, but I really think it's real skills. These are skills that we need to not only survive, but thrive in the real world. The second one is, how do we help students harness the tools, and I'm going to pick up my phone here, that are literally at our fingertips for what employers are looking for in the actual real world today. Guys, 2020 is 2 months away. What skills do they need to survive next year and in 2021, not just this time right now? And the third one, and this is where I'm going to ask a favor for everybody in the room, is how do we help the next generation of you all, of educators, market your skills, your accomplishments, and your career milestones, because you all have them. And so just to do a quick little benchmark here, where are my undergrad and graduate students at? Cool. So hands down. And out of everybody here in the room, who's going to be job searching in the next 3 to 12 months? Half of you are lying because you're sitting next to your coworker or boss, and you're like, I'm job searching. Like somebody knows what you're up to. It's all good. There's only so much you can advance and hire. You got to kind of move around. I get it. So here are the 2 hats I want you to wear, regardless of whether you're an undergrad or a senior VP, 2 hats. The first one I'd like you to wear is, how can you consume this presentation and the content I have in front of you for yourself? What can you learn today that might help you elevate your career, go to the next level, get that promotion? And the second hat I'd like you to wear simultaneously is, how can you take what you're going to learn today in the next 30, 40 minutes and most importantly, help your students? Can you guys do that? Cool. So here's what I'm going to do. I just want to do a level set, because I talked about in my opening story that I think I was going down a road and not really utilizing my marketable skills the correct way because I just wasn't into what I was set up to do. And so since starting the niche movement and since writing my book, I've interviewed hundreds of young professionals throughout a variety of career spectrums and industries. And what I found is, here are the 3 things I found when you're defining your niche or passion or purpose. And that's a buzzword, I get it. But the first thing is, you know that you're close to doing something that you love is when you are thriving. So I want you to think back, maybe back to college or back to high school. Can anybody think of a time where they were thriving, where something came super easy to them and they loved it? Maybe it was the trumpet, maybe it was soccer, maybe it was graphic design. Show of hands, who has something that they know like they were thriving with? Maybe you're thriving right now. Cool. So that's the first thing. And a lot of people ask me, they say, Kev, why don't you use the word success or successful? One, I think success is determined differently by a lot of different people. And 2, I think it's just another kind of fictitious word. It's like, ooh, you're successful. Well, what's success look like? I like the word thriving. The second thing, and this is so important because this is where I see people hit roadblocks. They love what they do, they're thriving, things are coming easy to them, but all of a sudden they're in a work environment where they're not challenged anymore. You're hired to be a specialist, and you're supposed to stay in your lane, or as our higher ed professionals love to use the word, silos. And don't deviate, don't partner, don't do anything other than that. But you want to be a generalist. And all of a sudden, you can do 8 hours of work in 4 hours. Anybody know anybody like that? You're not challenged. You need to be challenged. And the third thing is, and this is what really resonates with me, is that feeling of invincibility. You feel like there's blinders on whenever you're doing what you love. Whenever you're thriving and you feel challenged, you'll do whatever it takes. You'll be as crazy as I am to get up in front of 300 people who I grew up shy, and I hate doing this. I was sweating during that whole performance. I'm like, I just want to get up on stage. But now I'm up here. Let's do it. I feel invincible. You need to figure out what you want to do in your career, or maybe personal life, that makes you feel invincible. And when you match those together, that's your niche, or your purpose, or your passion. The last note I'll make about this is this should and will evolve. You could have it one day and go into work the next day and your boss gives their 2 weeks notice and they're gone. And all of a sudden, you're like, oop, maybe it was more I love what I did because of my boss. Or it could be an assignment or a project that you're on. Go ahead and take your pictures of this slide. By the way, you'll be able to get all these slides at the end and I'll tell you guys how. So here's what I want to do next is, myself included, we all hopefully are educated and trained in student development and engaging the whole student, right? But the problem that I see in my time, especially as this whole digital landscape has evolved, is those theories that we learned about from books from 1989 to 1999, to even like 2017 or 18, some of those theories or practices are outdated. And if we're supposed to engage the whole student and provide these high quality services and programs and events, shouldn't we be doing the same for our career exploration strategies? And shouldn't we be helping students to stop relying on a one-page, black and white resume to tell their story? I want you to think about that. We asked our students to do everything that they've done in 4 years to put on one resume or one cover letter, one page. It's a big order. Especially when we live in this world, and I love these little kids here, when we live in this world of a limitless connection economy. There's several other stories that I could share, and I omitted them from this presentation, but there's no more gatekeeper, everybody. We can get in touch with anybody we want to get in touch with. We can reach out to anybody we want to reach out to. We can start a podcast or an Instagram account without asking for any permission. And especially when we can take the knowledge that we've learned and the skills that we want to talk about and match that with our passion, in my opinion, the sky's the limit. And I have a great quote here. So there's going to be some research that I start to introduce here over the next 15, 20 minutes. And this is one from Indiana University. They put together a personal branding guide called How It Pays Off. Personal branding and how it pays off. And I love this introductory quote. It says, everyone you meet has an impression of you, whether you're an MBA student or a higher ed student affairs student, an executive or self-employed professional. Doesn't matter if you've connected with them on LinkedIn, over email, or even like at a conference here in person. They have a specific impression of who you are. What I want you to do real quick here for the next 90 seconds is I want you to think about what is your brand? What are your marketable skills? What do people not know about you that may not be on your resume or that can't be communicated on your resume? And just chit-chat for the next 90 seconds to 2 minutes and just say, hey, this is the story that I want to share. So here's where I want to take everything that this conference has talked about and mash it up with the digital world. And so there's been some other research that I have here from the New York Times Insight Consumer Group put together, and they actually found out, why do people post to Instagram? Why do they share stuff on Facebook, right? Why are we on these platforms? And so there's 4 reasons. The first one here on the, to the right is we do it to define who we are, right? And that could be from a personal or professional level, depending on the platform. We also do that to bring value to your friends, your family, your community, or entertainment, right? If you follow my wife, there's countless cat, dog, and wine photos and videos on her Instagram. I think it's bringing value to other people. Next, we have to just get the word out. And man, in higher education student affairs, we're great at that, right? Come to our event, sign up for this, whatever, like more and more and more come out, right? We promote ourselves, right? That's easy. And then the last one, I think this is the most important, is to build relationships. Before I flew in, I was following the TACUSPA hashtag and kind of looking at what people are saying, where they're coming from, engaging, favoriting, commenting, tweeting, things like that. And I'm hoping to build relationships. And we may never see each other again, but that doesn't mean that we don't have some type of connection or relationship, whether we get the chance to speak today or not. But these are the 4 main reasons that the New York Times Consumer Group found that we share online. So here's where I think is going to be a lot of value to all of you, are these next 6 tips. So the 6 types of digital identities. And just to kind of let you guys know where we're at with this is, I've shared this a handful of times, but specifically to college students. This is the first time I'm sharing it with professionals. And so again, I want you to think of these 2 hats that you're wearing. One, how does this relate to you and your career? And second, how does it relate to you and the student population that you work with? What can you bring back to them? So why do we share? Here are the 6 of them. I'm going to break down each one. And some of them have a nice little story and some people that I want you to meet that have capitalized on their marketable skills, their digital savviness, and their career future. So the first one, Altruist. That is what I would describe myself. I love sharing content that helps other people, right? That could be how-to videos. That could be there might be people out there how to, there's a whole genre of on YouTube of how to do makeup. There's a whole Instagram following of grandmothers of how to yarn and how to knit, right? So what can you do? What can you create if you're an altruist of how to do something in your field, right? I definitely align with Altruist. That's the first one. The second one, this is pretty straightforward, is Careerist. Some of you may see Careerist like you're just out there to build your network, move on, make more connections, get another job, get a promotion. It's kind of the sleazy way to do it. But a Careerist is that bottom part of build relationships and get people to connect with one another. You want to be known as X, Y, or Z. So when I go on your Twitter, your LinkedIn, your website, whatever, this is who I know, this is what I know about you, this is your professional reputation because you're a careerist. So I have a couple stories. And again, careerists generally find themselves on LinkedIn. They might be positioning themselves through sharing stuff through email. Any platform is a green light here, but for each of these I have a couple different platforms that might be more specific to others. So I want to share the first story of these 6 digital identities, and this one I think Dustin falls in the careerist bucket perfectly. Does anybody know Dustin or Hire Ed Geek? Cool, well Dustin, I'm bringing you to Texas. Dustin is probably about 8 to 9 years into his student affairs career, and he has a master's in student affairs from Rutgers University, an undergrad, I think, from UDEL, and he is what I'm going to call a student affairs tech professional. He's worked both in traditional college campus settings, he's worked at 2U, and now he works with Noodle Partners, which I believe partners with student affairs folks here in this room. But Dustin also, outside of work, is a nerd. Nerd culture, what's up? He loves video games, he loves tech, he loves Funko, he loves comic books, Marvels. If the new movie's out, he's first in line to go see it and do a review at midnight on it. So you would think, well, okay, that's a cool side hustle. How can Dustin mash that up? Well, if you notice here, here's his Instagram profile. Guys, what does his Instagram profile say? What's his name? Hire Ed Geek. He has built that professional reputation. He has started a podcast well over 3 years ago, just about a year or so out of his grad program, called Hire Ed Geek Podcast. He has over 100 episodes interviewing people in and outside higher ed and student affairs. But what he most has, and what I like about what he's done, is he has 100 new relationships. Genuine relationships. You ever get an email or done this and asked for an informational interview? If you're an undergrad or graduate student, I think we can get away with it. But once we're professionals and in our late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you can't play the informational interview game anymore. But Dustin has built his network virtually and in person and through conferences by just hosting a podcast. And here's the great thing, is he has seasons. He knows when he's going to be busy and more or less busy. So this isn't something that he pumps out every week, but he does probably about a dozen or so episodes a year. But the best thing that he's doing, talk about marketable skills, is Dustin was kind of like me. He was a little bit shy, a little bit introverted, likes his downtime, but he is hosting a podcast to flex his real skills, his interviewing skills, his communication and personal skills, his creative skill set, right? And his outreach skill set. And that's just one way that he's doing it as I would define Dustin as a careerist. I would highly recommend checking out his podcast. He has some heavy hitters on there. I believe last year's keynote was Dr. Josie Alquist, right? I think he interviewed her. So some great content on there. Highly recommend to give him a look. Third one, I love this one. This is hipsters. Yeah, we hear about this term up in New York City and Brooklyn, but it relates to digital identities. These are people that are on the cutting edge, super creative. They have an eye for digital content, digital stories, YouTube, writing, whatever it might be. I'm going to bring a family member into this next story of somebody that I think is a hipster. And generally, I would believe, again, you can do this on any platform. I think you'll find hipsters on Instagram, YouTube, the new platform TikTok, which is a whole nother discussion I'm willing to have. But I want you to meet my cousin Leah. She is 20, and Leah, if you ever watch this video, I think you're 25. Leah graduated from TCNJ up in New Jersey with a journalism degree. She did what I was about ready to do. She went right into Syracuse and did a 5th-year communications and journalism program as well. But the cool thing is Leah, again, was a typical student leader that we see in and out of our doors every day. She did internships, she was a resident assistant in her grad program, and she had an on-campus media job. From what I can tell, she kind of hit a couple roadblocks of like getting a full-time job right out of a master's degree, right? But what Leah was doing on the side as a hipster, and man was she good at it. Meet her dog Posey, Pug Love. She started a side Instagram account for her dog Posey. And somehow she miraculously ran it through college, and like I guess her parents, my aunt and uncle, probably sent her content and she would share it. But she was so good that she created a digital voice. So she would post almost every other day or so. And I think this one says, hiding from Monday under this blanket. She played the hashtag game. She basically taught herself social media hacking and what works on Instagram and what happens in the dogs of Instagram culture, and built this micro following. About 3 or 4 months later, after graduating, she went on a couple job interviews. She wanted to get into fashion and fashion blogging, lifestyle, etc. And she wound up catching this job at Net-a-Porter, which from my understanding is a very high-end fashion brand right outside of New York City, like Beyonce and all these celebrities shop there, like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 necklaces. She's now doing media. And one of the things I said, well, Leah, like, how was the interview? You know, was one of the things that you talked about. She said that she actually brought up this Pug account. And she could show, like, I understand posting, I understand, I understand visuals, I understand post copy and digital voice. Sure, it's a dog. But here's what I want you all to take away from, this is one of the many things I want you to take away. The next time a student comes in with a crazy, silly idea like Leah, of like, I'm going to run this dog Instagram account, right? He or she might be onto something. They might be flexing that creative muscle that they're not doing in class or maybe on campus with you. So regardless of how silly it is, what are they doing that is flexing a marketable skill that they can talk about in an interview? Little quick side tangent, my other cousin Jenny, she has a 12-year-old daughter who's obsessed with TikTok, as you are at 12. She came down and visited us this year, and she directed what turned out to be a 15-second TikTok clip, but it took 30 minutes to direct. She directed me and my wife. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, these are marketable skills. These are real skills. You be here, you be here. She was leading for 30 minutes. So just as crazy as it might be, especially if you're not digitally native, there's something there that can be marketable. The fourth one we have are boomerangs. We all have boomerangs in our life. They post some passive-aggressive, and you're like, who are they talking about? And they just want a reaction, right? But you can think about that in the professional world, right? Maybe you want to take a stance in student affairs. Maybe there's a trend that's unfolding that you don't agree with. Maybe there's a trend that should be happening that you want to start. Boomerangs specifically create content and share their skill sets through something that provokes some reaction and seeks validation. That's most important. Fifth one, this is where I see a little bit more of myself as well, are connectors. Is anybody in the room really good or enjoy making connections for other people? Maybe it's on campus, off campus, even here at this conference. Cool. So you may fall in this group. Just as it says, you're looking to figure out how can you take online and offline relationships and bridge connections, introduce people to one another, hopefully get some partnerships off the ground. And generally that can happen in person or online, as I just mentioned. This is my favorite story. I share it any chance I get. Is anybody familiar with Megan Gebhardt? Anybody hear of her? She was just like many of our students and became a senior at Michigan State University a handful of years ago. And just around this time, September, October, started knocking on the door. And she's like, oh my God, I only have like 6 more months until I graduate and the real world is upon me. And she said, I know no one. But what she realized, she loved coffee and she loved meeting people. And so she set out in late fall for about a year to start 52 cups of coffee. She started with professors and advisors and people in her circle at MSU. She then went back home in Michigan and met with some people there from World War I and II veterans, and it took off. She traveled to 29 cities, 7 countries, and she's calling it 52 Connections, but I know damn well that she made more than 52 connections because I know she was on Seth Godin's radar and interviewed him. He's a big marketing thought leader. And this is a great example of how to make connections when you don't have them, right? It sounds a lot better than that informational interview buzzword. Now, a lot of you may say, well, Kev, did Megan just go on to be another thought leader and write a book? Well, she did write a book, but she used this platform, and again, the skills that she learned to get on somebody's radar and to interview and to actually have really solid personable skills. She's now been at Airbnb as a technical recruiter for at least 6 years that I can follow. Last I checked, Airbnb is like top 4 or 5 most valued startup in San Francisco. And she got in very, very early, and she's been there for 6 or 7 years, so I'm sure they're taking care of her. Yes, she has a book. Yes, she does some things on 52 Cups, but she used that platform and those connections to get a job at one of the top 4 startups in our society. So I love that example of Megan being a connector. And then the last one I have that I like to close out with is Selective. And there's probably a lot of you in this room that might be selective, and the first thing I'll say is that's okay. If you don't want to share your digital brand or your professional or personal self online, I get it. But there is a time and a place to share it if you are strategic, and that's what selectives are. But I don't want to talk about a professional. I want to talk about a student. As Taylor mentioned, I teach at George Washington University. I teach 3 sections of a leadership development course. And every semester I get to interact with and teach 20 to 60 first-year business school students that have no idea what they're embarking on. And we harp on resume and cover letter and dressing in a suit and going to Deloitte networking events. We preach that. We're great at that. But I try to bring in the soft skills. And one of the things that I just made this adjustment this year in our syllabus is we asked our students, 18 years old, and GW colleagues, you know I made this adjustment, but we asked our 18-year-old students 3 weeks into college to deliver a 5-minute presentation with a partner, aka a college stranger, another student that they have no relationship with, and get up in front of 20 students to deliver a 5-minute talk on an industry they want to work in. Without any public speaking, presentation, slide design, training, lesson plans, etc. Do you think they're going to be set up to fail or succeed? You'll have a couple that do pretty well, but imagine that. 3 weeks into college, you need to pick an industry, partner up with somebody, and present for 5 minutes in front of your class, in front of a professor. I'd be scared shitless. What we decided to do is let's move that to week 8 or 9 and actually spend a week or 2 teaching them the skills to finish this assignment, have time to meet their partner and feel what it's like to work on a group project outside class, because we all know that's so much fun. But also, what are the 5 best practices to present, slide design, etc. William was one of those students that went through our class last year. He's now a sophomore, still figuring out what he wants to do. May not have those real skills yet. He's a business student. He thinks, I think his profile says he's a finance major, but I know he's interested in sports marketing, commercial real estate, etc. But he's a selective. And man, I love following him on LinkedIn because I don't know when he's going to post. But when he does, I'm like, ooh, what's Will got to say today? And so what he does is he's part of a couple different organizations. I think one is the Black League Real Estate organization in GW. He's part of a sports marketing group. But this post up here, oh man, that is grainy. I'm going to read from my laptop. So he volunteered to attend some sports marketing and networking industry conference. He wrote a little blurb about it. But what you can see is he took 3, 4, 5, 6 pictures, and he got a chance to meet the people that spoke on those panels. And even one of the things he said, it was so great to learn and connect with amazing leaders on these panels and discussion boards. So he actually had the courage to go up and like take a couple selfies or pictures of the people that spoke up there. So he now had all these different people in his network. He also does this, which is what I love, is a long form post on LinkedIn. He wrote a whole thing where he got to sit in a GW business talk with Mark Lerner, who's the founder of the Nats. Go Nats! Tia Brown's not here anymore, is she? Shit. I know there's another Nats fan. He wrote this whole long, I say long, right? To a college student, this is long, right? It's not double-spaced. But he wrote this paragraph on his reflection of what Mark Lerner did to become not only an owner, but a philanthropist in DC, and how he built this business. That's a great piece of content. And again, I don't know when Will's going to post next, but he's selective. He's strategic that he's posting about sports marketing, real estate, or finance. So you know what his brand is and what he's trying to do. So those are the 6. I'm going to share this up here for any of the people that love taking pictures. Just to recap, we have Altruist, Careerist, Hipsters like my cousin Leah who had a Pug account, Boomerangs who are looking for, they're poking the box or poking the bear, Connectors like Megan Gebhardt, and Selectives like Will Davis. So I just want you to take 15 to 30 seconds and think about what speaks to you the most. If you had to, right now if I asked you, which I'm not, if I had to ask you, where do you fall? Which one are you? Which one? And again, anybody that wants to look at this, please email me and I will share this whole guide and report with you if you'd like. The point with all of this is when we take our digital savviness and these tools at our fingertips and we actually come into rooms like this and conferences like this with the mindset of documenting experiences that might have changed our life or where we really learned something, and we actually capture it, and instead of having, like my wife, pictures of our cat and dog and wine on our phone, where we actually have connection, photos and videos and maybe little notes on your iPhone note of like reflections from each session, there's learning happening here. There's marketable skills that can be talked about, and I love the idea of having portfolios. And yes, cover letters and resumes will not go away, because I think, Diana, you mentioned they're like 500 years old. They're not going away. We still need to follow rules. But there's this new game in town. And if you can identify yourself with one of these 6, you might be onto something. So just approach each professional setting of like, how can I document this? Can I record it and go back to it? Can I write a blog post about it? And so I want to share a couple quick tips, and then we're going to close this out. 30 seconds of work can have a direct impact on your career. While you guys were doing that parent share, I took a quick picture for myself up here. That's content. That's a story. So I'm not telling you that you need to go home and tell your students or yourself that, oh my God, I need to be like Dustin. I need to start a podcast. I need to buy $200 of equipment on Amazon. That's not what I'm saying. No, I'm not saying you need to spend 2 hours that you don't have outside of meetings on LinkedIn. No. It's 30 seconds of work. It's going to the airport. It's right after this session, grabbing coffee, checking on LinkedIn, favoriting a tweet, engaging with somebody. And one of the things that I do, again, several other stories that I took out of this, is each week I am at GW. This is one facet, one silo of my life. I document what happens every Wednesday I'm there. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but I don't know if that has any other outcome. But I know it paints the picture of Kevin's just not a digital storyteller. He's just not a dog lover and loves mac and cheese and isn't just an adjunct at GW or runs the niche movement. He's multifaceted, and that's the way I want to be known. So think about what can you share every day, like what's one thing you can document. And so I'm going to give you 3 examples. Again, pick a platform. I'm going to reiterate that at the end, but perhaps you jump on LinkedIn. It could just be like what Will did. Maybe it's a 250-word quick recap of the KUSPA conference. Here's what I learned. Here's who I meant. Maybe it's a couple posts. Maybe you share your project case study or even thesis summary. Or you share, you have somebody take a picture of you defending your thesis in May. The third one I think is great. is progress. Hey, we got this new grant to run this service learning program. We just hired, whatever it is, show progress. That's whole part of storytelling. And the last one is a professional selfie. Be like Elizabeth Warren and set up shop and just I'm going to get everybody selfie before you leave, right? Something like that. On Instagram, yes, it could be stories. It could be an individual post that you're selective about. It could be following hashtags. It could be not being afraid to direct message somebody. But it could just be a leadership quote of the day or week. Behind the scenes of your class, your professors. If I was to do it all over again, if I was a grad student right now, I would start some feature on every one of your student affairs professors. Hey, can I interview you for 30 minutes? Maybe that's blog, maybe that's a podcast, maybe that's video. And then do you know how many other people would want to hear how they got into their career and all this, what they're teaching? That's what I would do. Highlight others to follow, and again, that professional selfie. Don't be afraid to do that. And last but not least, I do still think Twitter is alive and well. I'll be honest, I jumped back on it coming to this conference. I think it is a real good, real-time app for news and for events and conferences like this. But again, it could just be you sharing an article or story of the day or week related to your field of study or your career choice. Or for the young woman that spoke up, maybe it's all about veterans in higher education, whatever it might be. Or maybe you're writing that post. Creating Twitter lists is a great little tool that I think is underrated on Twitter. And then using moments to recap something happening on your campus or in your space, or again, what your student is studying. I don't want this to be a fire hose to the face, but what does your digital identity matrix look like? This is kind of a snapshot of mine that I put together. It's okay to be a different identity on a different platform at a given time. On LinkedIn, I like to help others. I like to make connections. That's how I describe myself. On Facebook, I'm a little bit more selective. I don't post as much anymore. It's more some personal stuff, connecting with family. On Instagram, I'm all above. On YouTube, I'm an Altruist and Careerist, and I'm kind of dabbling in podcasting, but again, it's to help others. So yours does not have to look like this, but again, just like finding your niche, it should evolve. And you don't have to be one thing to one platform or at any given time. So if I was to summarize this, I'd say just pick a platform. For 6 months, just pick one platform to tell your real skills. Try to do it just like working out, maybe 3 times a week. That's it. But here are the 2 sub things. There's one, make it grandma friendly. And I don't mean make it PG rated. That's not what yeah, you need to be professional. What I mean is your 85-year-old grandmother should know what you're up to. Your language, your branding, your story should make sense to a 3-year-old, let's say 6-year-old, to an 85-year-old. We like to use kind of education speak a lot. That's cool, and it's acronym galore in higher education, I understand. But have real speak. And it should be obviously employer-friendly. I especially tell that to any students that are going to take this advice, is it should be employer-friendly. Especially if you have students that are, if you or somebody are following this advice, and well, boss, we're in this meeting, I'm taking pictures of everything. Well, maybe you can't take pictures of everything. Maybe you can't write maybe they work for an agency and they can't write the legality of a client. You need to be smart. I wish I had this advice, and I wish someone told me this when I was, in 2006 when I graduated, when I was headed down this path that did just not feel right. I didn't dream. I luckily stumbled upon student affairs for 3 reasons. One, after being an orientation leader, I set in as we do a whole performance review or a one-on-one with your dean or director, and I was scared. And they said, "Did you know you're a leader?" And the next 2 years, I was off to the races. That was the first unlock. The second one was my wife and I had a mentor, Michelle Brisson, that came from University of Vermont and did Student Affairs grad program, and we had no idea this existed. And the third thing is my wife, Courtney, got into this field before I even did. But I didn't dream. But I know students that do dream, and they take the knowledge and the skills, and they run right through the wall. And they find a job that they love. So I want to challenge you to dream up a list, and this should take time. And I'm really going to challenge the student affairs practitioners in here that are job searching. I don't care if you're in the second year or if you've been in this field for 20 or 30 years. create a dream for yourself. And be super particular. What I like to challenge people to do, especially people that are struggling in their career or not a little lost, is sit down and think about the 10 to 20 people or organizations that you would love to work for. That you would do anything. You'd take a pay cut, you would travel across the country, you'd shovel dung, whatever it might be, but you would work for them. Because here's a real life case of how this worked out for, I'm going to text Val that I shared her story. I haven't shared this yet. Valerie and I had a chance to work together for almost 3 years when I was working at Rutgers University in the recreation department. She was a journalism major as well, just like my cousin Leah, graduated in 2015, so 4 years ago. What she's done in 4 years is incredible. She was doing marketing and media. She was learning in the classroom, outside the classroom. And then there was that kind of inflection point where you have students that you love, and then all of a sudden they're like, can't make it to work today, I got to do my internship. Like all of a sudden you're no longer a priority to them. And you get it, right? That started happening for Val. And I remember every now often we would have these conversations, be like, Val, where do you want to work? What are you trying to do? Like, what's your list? Where are you going to apply these skills? And so she came up with this dream list of working for CNN with Anderson Cooper. And listen, at 20 years old, you're kind of like, yeah, okay, like, it's a good goal. Rachel Maddow, who's a powerhouse, love her on MSNBC. She also was like, I'd love to work for like an up-and-coming OTT or like digital TV platform. But really, she's like, I'll work anywhere at MSNBC just to like meet or bump into the hall of Rachel Maddow or anybody at NBC or CNN. Like literally, she'll do whatever. And she even was like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in like working with like a Trevor Noah or like an up-and-coming, comedian TV news host. So she followed that, and sure enough, she landed, I think her senior year through the connections at Rutgers and through hustling and through applying her skills. She interned at MSNBC for Lawrence O'Donnell, I think the 10 o'clock hour. She even got a shout out online, or got a shout out on TV her last day of an internship. And then a couple months went by, she graduated, and she was fidgeting around. She's like, I don't know if I'm going to get a job at Rachel Maddow. Sure enough, she became a production assistant with Rachel Maddow within a couple months of graduating from Rutgers. She got promoted within about a year or two, which is awesome, to associate producer. And that niche of thriving, challenge, and invincible started to shake a little bit. So she said, let me go see what else is out there. And I remember she texted me. She's like, Kev, can you be a reference? I'm applying for a job at Netflix. And I'm like, you're leaving Rachel? She's like, yeah, there's a potential opportunity here. She worked for a year with Hassan Massaj on the Patriot Act as a producer. I'm not sure if that show is back or not, but man, like she was like front row and center producing that show. Guys, she was like 24, 25, 26 years old. Is there a number 5? Do you think there's something next? Associate editorial producer, Anderson Cooper, and on her second week, damn it, on her second week, we don't care about that. On her second week, after the U.S. women's soccer team won, she got to meet Megan Rapinoe because she was a guest on Anderson Cooper, and she was helping produce that segment. Yes, she was a little selfish. Yes, it took a big risk, but she dreamed, and she created a list, and she said, here's my knowledge, here's my skills, and here's where I want to apply them. What I want to leave you with is I really want you to think not about the 6 identities and not what social media platform I'm suggesting you to be on and what story you need to tell, but I really want you to think of in a world of limitless connections, which we all are in, and I really think one of the reasons I'm up here today is because of limitless connections and telling my story. I want you to think about what is your story and how will you tell it? Thank you. To Kusba, I really enjoyed the last 55 minutes. I can't thank you so much for your hospitality. and Nikki and your gang for putting this conference together. I do just want to share that I know that there's a lot of tangible things in here. And for free, if you want to go onto the nichemovement.com to KUSPA, I updated this morning, but you can not only download the entire slide deck, but you can also download, there's about 3 or 4 free career guides. A lot of extension of what I talk about with the niche movement of how to find a job that you love, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all free. But thank you. And I'm not sure what the script says, if I'm supposed to shake some, and I know that's a whole play here tonight. But Nikki, thank you, and thank you all. I also am looking for barbecue recommendations back towards Austin, Texas this evening, so if anybody has recommendations, please let me know. But thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.